Good morning, everybody. Lee Brower here, and welcome to this week's edition of Meaningful Monday. I am grateful to be here, and I am glad to be here. And don't forget, Nix, Fix, Mix in 26. I'm always looking for examples of where people can take what is normally an arrows in, where it's all about themselves, and turn it into an arrows out experience. Several months ago, I was reading an article in Inc. magazine by Catherine Peters, and she's co-founder of a consulting company called With III Leadership, where she shared an experience that I believe is worthy of sharing. Now, we've all been on those flights where the announcement comes, please remain seated so passengers with tight connections can deplane first. And what usually happens? Some wait, some pretend not to hear, and many stand up anyway and ignore, or they didn't even hear it. You see, because the instruction feels transactional, it doesn't feel relational. But on a flight, this particular flight, okay, the flight attendant did something different. After confirming the plane's late arrival, the flight attendant asked passengers to raise their hand if they were ending their journey in Salt Lake City, which was the flight's destination. And after most of the hands in the cabin went up, she continued. Now, everyone who has their hands up, imagine the anxiety you'd feel if you had to catch another flight tonight and you weren't sure you'd make it. So put your hands down. And now those connecting to San Francisco, Palm Springs, and Denver, raise yours. So everyone looked around and did as the flight attendant requested. And she then said, these are the people who will be sprinting off the plane tonight as soon as we land. Look at them. Imagine this was you. And then she encouraged everyone in the plane, everyone in the cabin who didn't have a connecting flight to stay seated and give those passengers the space to get out as quickly as possible. Now imagine you're on that plane. What would you notice is the energy? Wouldn't you see it shift? I mean, the energy in the whole plane would shift. Everyone had the same mission. When the plane landed, sure enough, the people stayed seated. They actually encouraged those with connections to move forward. There was cheering, there was a sense of contribution. You see, it wasn't compliance, it was cooperation. And that difference matters. And that moment really reflects what psychologists Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman describes as three types of empathy. So listen carefully. One, cognitive empathy, which is all about just understanding. So the first question that the flight attendant asked was to get clarity. It was to create awareness so people could see the scope of the situation. The second question was about emotional empathy. So cognitive is about understanding, emotional empathy is about feeling. And so seeing hands raised all around the cabin shifted isolation into a shared experience. So stress stopped being private. The third then is compassionate empathy. That's about action. What did she do to get him into action? That final invitation moved the cabin from awareness to action. It wasn't an instruction, stay seated. It was, let's help each other. That's arrows out. And compassionate empathy transforms compliance into contribution. So there's some leadership lessons here. Most tense environments default to arrows in. My schedule, my frustration, my inconvenience. But leaders can ask questions that expand perspective and unify people around a shared objective. So when people feel like they're a part of a team, even temporarily, behavioral changes. Behavior changes. Empathy is not softness, it's alignment. How about in business? Instead of saying we need to hit this deadline, try instead, how many of us are feeling the pressure of this timeline? And what would help us support each other? How many of us are feeling the pressure of this timeline? And what would help us support each other? You'll see shoulders lower, you'll see the pressure come out, you'll see ownership rise instead. What about at home? How many of you just say, calm down? How about instead? How many of us have had a bad day today? Or how many of us have had a long day today? That simple question builds belonging. And children learn from empathy, not from instruction, but from observation. That's positive generational impact. So, what's the core principle here? Cognitive empathy informs, emotional empathy connects, and compassionate empathy mobilizes. And when empathy mobilizes, people don't just comply, they contribute. So here's our empowering question for the week. What question could I ask that would turn instruction into invitation? I'm going to give you one right now. Would you be willing? Instead of saying, I want you to, get those four magic words. Would you be willing? See what happens. Ask it daily. Watch what shifts. You see, compliance controls behavior. Empathy creates contribution. Have a meaningful week. And if today's meaningful week helped you, help it reach someone else. Arrows Out begins with one share. I look forward to talking to you next week. Bye bye.